Hi, I'm Cathy Derksen. I help you get published and become a best-selling author. I'm so excited to have a soulful conversation today.
Sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shade around here.
Everybody, it's Pearl Sharenza with Women's Successful Living, the founder of the Shiro Method, and of course, also our amazing self-care retreats that we hold every year. And this year we have our 10th one. But today I'm so excited to be the host of our Soulful Self-Care Conversations. And our special guest is Cathy Derksen, who is the founder of Inspire Tenacity. She's an international speaker, a 22 times #1 best-selling author and publisher. And she helps midlife women step into the new possibilities of sharing their stories and building their legacy. Through books, retreats, and community, Cathy empowers women to grow their visibility, expand their business. And I love that she does this because every time I'm with somebody, Cathy and I am, especially when I coach at the Mary Martha House, which is an amazing nonprofit here in Tampa, Florida, that I support in coaching. I always tell the ladies in the house, you have a story. In fact, last night we were together and I told them, you have a story, like leave a note in the pillow and just share a little bit about your story so that the person comes in after you, they can see that your successes and what you've done in your life. And that, while the story may be a little different, there are some parallels in there. And, getting our story out, there's that person that needs to hear your story. And so I'm glad to have you on today so we can hear your story and how you help others share their story. So welcome to the show, Cathy.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I always love to start off the show with a fun little question. And if you're new to the show, welcome. We're so excited to have you, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your radio or your phone, whatever that is. Make sure you like and follow and subscribe because we have some great guests that come on and share some amazing information. And I don't have questions preset. I'm not that kind of host, but I do always start off with one question. So if you're new, here we go. If you're coming back, thank you so much for coming back and listening. And the question that we're going to ask Cathy is, Cathy, introduce us to little Cathy. When she was younger, tell us a little bit about her. What was like life like growing up, and how does that correlate to what you do today?
Very good question. Well, when I was a kid, we moved around a lot. So it was a lot of making friends, losing friends, starting over again. And I think that has kind of impacted me more over the years than I realize. And it wasn't until really that I graduated high school, went to university, that I kind of decided I'm just staying in one place for a while. So really, I would say though, a few of the things that really were me or curiosity. I was always especially curious about anything living. So my didn't surprise anyone when later my career went into biology in my first career path. And yes, always loved being outside, loved meeting new people, loved just being busy and curious.
I love that. I can so relate to the moving around a lot that you shared with you because as a little girl, my inner child, she moved around a lot as well. And one of the things that was because my dad was in the service. So my dad did 3 tours in Vietnam. And so
Wow.
back then, and yeah, and many people don't know, but back then you weren't, if your spouse went off to war, you didn't get to stay on base housing. You had to leave so the next family could come in and prepare that spouse for going. So we did, my dad was based out of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. So we did oftentimes would leave North Carolina to go upstate New York with my granny. I remember talking to my dad many times when he would be in Okinawa and things like that to call home. So we'd go back and forth like that. And then when my dad got out of the service, I think we stayed in North Carolina for a few more years and they brought us to Florida. I moved out when I graduated high school and had my own apartment. And my parents were going to California, back to California. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll go with them. And I got there and I did not like it at all. And interesting enough that younger age of moving around actually happened in my marriage. I met my husband in California. We both decided we didn't like to live there. Things were changing in the government. They were closing the defense bases. And so he was working for the Department of Defense at the time. And so they gave an option of, well, you can travel with your job and be home based where you are in California, or you can leave or you can transfer. And I told him, I'm like, listen, I knew growing up, when I was dating, if I dated anybody that was in the service, I was like, thank you so much for serving our country. I don't want to live that life because I watched my mom live it and I didn't want to repeat that life. So I told my husband, I go, we're not staying home based and you travel. So we ended up transferring to Virginia. And so we stayed in Virginia for, I would say, almost 10 to 12 years. And then he had the opportunity to move here to Florida. And like, why not? So we've been now based in, this is the longest since we've been married. We've been based in one spot in Tampa, Florida area. And so we've been here over 20 years now. So I can so correlate with the moving around. Starting over, making new friends, that was hard for me though, because I was very shy. I was very much an introvert, which is so funny now because I have this podcast and my voice is out there everywhere. But that goes to what you do. That really goes to sharing my story. You know, my husband, when I met Chuck, I didn't know how to communicate because I grew up in a house of my parents argued, they just didn't talk. So that's all I knew for communication. So if my husband was sitting next to me, he goes, yeah, the best thing I did and the worst thing I did was teach her that she has a voice because now I get my voice to him and anywhere. You know, I'm not shy to share my voice. And so that's why, you know, sharing our stories. I too am an author, and just like you, hold retreats, and we're actually holding a really cool first time event in May. We're doing a Say Yes to You and Your Business Summit. So how do you bridge both of them together and have time for self and business? So I love that you're on here sharing this because yes, I can see how that little girl, now she's helping people share stories, kind of find your grounding, whether it is moving around or whether it's just being in the one spot. I think that's so amazing. So let's talk about Cathy. Let's talk about, because you know we talk about self-care often on the show. We talk about how, you know, we have to take care of self, but we also need to stand up for ourselves and set boundaries around ourselves. And so when you're working with somebody who, you know, they have a great story, or even just their story itself that they should share, how do you walk them through that? How do you help them process that? Because I'm sure you oftentimes people, oh, nobody wants to hear my story, nobody wants to hear what I have to say, right? How do you help your clients see how important that story is? Especially, I mean, you're a 22 times bestseller, like, you know how it's done. So tell us how you help them embrace that inner story.
Yes, and you're right. It is so common among women to have them say, "Oh, my story's not that important. I haven't done anything really impressive. Nobody wants to hear my story." And I hear that so much. And one of my usual techniques is we get on a Zoom like this and I start that conversation. Well, tell me about your life. Tell me about what's you're passionate about, what's inspired you, what have been some of the turning points in your life. And and there's never been a time that I've talked to someone and gone, "Oh, you're right. There's nothing here." There's always, all of us have been through ups and downs and journeys. And like you were saying earlier, too, our stories can have so much impact on the people reading them and listening to them. And it doesn't have to be the exact same situation they came through, but even just seeing you know the challenges people have come over, the courage they've had to have, and things like that, just that inspires us to take on our own challenges as well, even if they're completely different. So yes, everyone has a story that really needs to be shared, and the impact that you can create by sharing your story goes so far beyond what you'll ever even know. And I think that's one of the big parts too that people don't always anticipate, that, especially when you do put your story on a podcast or in a book, someone 5, 10 years from now could be listening to that story, reading that book, and getting that, the impact that you have developed there. So it's your story can be just amazing. And it's definitely good to keep sharing it and keep letting people know the impact they can create.
Yeah, I love that you reminded me of something, and that has to do with my son, because getting on stage, first of all, like just talking and sharing my story, that was like scary to start with, like, oh my gosh. And I took a Dale Carnegie course years ago when I worked in a corporate world, and that was really another part too that helped me become confident in like standing and speaking. And then also since then working with speaking coaches and things like that. And I didn't work at speaking coaches so after I started this podcast, and the podcast cast just came from like getting people's stories out there, sharing like what we're doing today, sharing your story so others can hear that people like you and I, we're no different than the people that are listening. You know, we're just as important as you are that's listening, and your story is just as important as our story, and what you do is as important as the rest of us. And so I remember when I was speaking, we have two boys. Our oldest is forever in heaven and at 25 years old. We lost him 3 years ago in a tragic car accident. And our younger son, he's 26 now. And I remember when I started speaking on stage and sharing stories, my younger one, he's like, you know, whatever you're doing, mom. It's not that he's such an introvert. He's like, it's all whatever. But my older one, he used to start it. He was adopted, so we adopted Matt a month old, and he was mixed race. He was the only mixed race child in his bio family and his adopted family with us. And so he kept saying, "Mom, we should share the story. We should share the story." And so we never got to do it when he was here on earth. So when he went to heaven, I was like, "We need to do this. This is his legacy. This is something he wanted to do. Let's honor that." And so we did a book. It's called Beyond Skin Deep: Stories of Cross-Cultural Adoptions. And it's about families that adopt children from a different culture. And interesting enough, like when I was doing this, getting this book together, in my head, because Matthew was so much about numbers. He was born 7/7/97. He actually passed 2 weeks after his birthday at 7/25/22. Everything about him was all these numbers, right? And so I was like, oh, we need to have 25 authors. Like, we need to have 25 families sharing their story. I was just hooked on this. And it actually stopped me for almost one full year from moving the project forward because we had 7 people sign up, 7 people share their stories, and 7 amazing families that have shared their stories. And they don't know it yet. So if they're listening to this, they're going to hear the news. We just got a big impact award, national award that we just found out about. So we're really excited about that. So I had to sit back, and a friend of mine, Pam Owens, if she's listening, hello, Pam. She actually said to me, she goes, "What if it's supposed to only be 7? What if that's all it's supposed to be?" And I sat there and I went home like, you know what? She's right. Because Matt was everything about Matthew had something to do with 7. So it ended up being 7 authors. Two, of course, one of us was my husband and I, and we had authors from Tennessee, California, Texas, like all over. We touched almost all different cities and, you know, little points of the US. And it's been amazing because it gets the story out there, it gets people talking, and they get to hear that when you adopt a child of a different culture, there are things that come with that. And there's lessons you need to learn, like be in a community that surrounds them around their culture. Make sure you're engaging and asking them, you know, questions about, is there something that they are dealing with at school? Because I didn't know it till after Matt passed, how much his peers of the same nationality bullied him because he had parents that were of white descent. So it started
Ooh,
great conversations, right? And so what you're saying is so true. You never know how just a little pinpoint of your story can make a big impact.
exactly. Yes. No, that's an amazing story.
Yeah. So what how long, so 22 years, number one bestseller. Let's talk about that because that's hard work. I mean, I know I've written a couple books and you know, I've done collaborative ones. The one I did with Matthew was just that was my first collab that I organized. And then I did 2 individual ones are more like workbook kind of thing. So it's a lot of work to become a number one bestseller. So can you enlighten us like what kind of goes into it? Like because some people say, I'm just going to self publish, right? So they think they don't need to hire somebody like you, Cathy. They think, oh, I can do it all on my own, right? Share with the audience why it's important to have a publisher to help guide you and the some of the back behind the scenes that we don't know about becoming a number one bestseller.
Yes, yes. And all of the books that I've been involved in are anthologies, so compilation books. And actually, as of December 23rd, that's now 23 books that I've been involved in, and that's all been in the last less than 4 years. So it's definitely become something I do a lot of. And one of the things I love about multi-author books is that now you've got, you know, whatever number you had 7 in yours. Most of my books, I focus on having 20 people. You've got that number of communities all over the world or wherever they are, all promoting the same thing. And so that definitely helps a lot. So when you've got a solo book and you're the only one marketing and promoting, it becomes a whole different game. And one of the things I love, though, if you do a multi-author book first and you hit your bestseller status, that is now a title that you have earned and that you can put on your profiles and your websites. And any future books, if you do then go on and do your own solo book, you can put it right on the cover that you are a best-selling author. So that's one of the things that I love about that. And yes, I have a whole team that I work with. And so we've got people that are doing the editing, proofreading, formatting, dealing with Amazon, which is its own creature, and of course all the marketing that we do and that kind of thing. There are a lot of moving pieces, and so having someone who has done this before, has learned the ropes and learned some of the stumbling points, is really valuable.
I totally agree with you. Having somebody to help navigate it all because, I had an editor help us with our book because I was like, I can't do all the editing because it's a lot to be involved in. And once if you're not familiar with it, if you're not familiar with things to look for, it can be overwhelming. And just getting everything else together is very, very overwhelming. So I hired an editor when we did that book as well. And it was such a relief. It was so worth the investment and all of that. So if somebody's listening to us today and they're like, I don't know if my story is important enough, how do they reach out to have that conversation with you, to be like, just have a conversation with Cathy and she can
Yeah.
reassure you if it's a great story, good story, whatever, she can guide you. And maybe it's a story that's not a self book, maybe it's a story that you need to be in with other people and share stories amongst a common theme. I know I've done some books about, about business, about growing business, about health and wellness, and I've done it with other, like you said, other people, which opens up, as you said, amazing communities and amazing connections as well. And so, how do they reach out to you? Where do they find you, Cathy?
Yes, as far as social media goes, LinkedIn is where I hang out the most. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. My website is inspiretenacity.com. And there you'll find there's some free PDF downloads of my previous books. There's links to book a time on my calendar. There are descriptions of the current book projects that we've got open for people to jump into. And so those are the easiest ways to find me. And just so people know as well, I'm always looking for new ideas. So as my books finish, then I start new books. And so if you've got an idea, and really, it's focused around topics that are inspiring and motivating. So, one of my previous books is like Passion, Purpose, and Possibilities. Another one is Embrace Courage, Ripple Effect of Impact. So, names and titles and themes like that are broad enough that, like we were saying, almost anyone has a story that fits under them, but also are words that are inspiring and positive and motivating.
I love that. I love the ripple effect. Remind me of a show I just recently watched. And for those that are listening, you need to go watch Ripple. I think it's on Netflix. So that's a little plug. I should get paid from Netflix for that. But it's a great story because it's all about the how one little thing can change so many things in the world. We forget one little, like our conversation right now can be a ripple effect for somebody that may call you and have a conversation with you and say, "Hey, I have this idea, or this is part of my story. I'm not sure where it fits. Can you help and guide me?" And Cathy is a great person for you to reach out to. So if you're thinking you have a story, you need to just call her, because just the thought is worth the conversation, because Cathy may know where you plug into. She may have something that plugs in. Do you do collaborative too? Like if somebody, like let's say I brought some authors to you, Cathy, do you do some sort of collaborative with those type of ideas too?
Yes. Yes. So if somebody
Awesome.
has their own community and they'd like to create a book that's focused on their community, or if they have an idea and a group of people that they've already got together, then yes, I work with people to get their ideas and their books out there too.
Awesome. I love it. So we'll put everything in the show notes that you can reach Cathy and get in connection with her and share your story, share your idea, or maybe you know somebody that needs to be speaking with Cathy, share this episode with them as well, because I think it's really, really important conversation that you have. And like we said, we're not promised tomorrow. I mean, almost 4 years ago, I that reality hit me with the loss of our son, and before he passed, I learned to step in and live my life the way I want to live it, with boundaries. And even after, I do it even more. And so I think it's important to get your story out there, share your story, and reach out to Cathy and to do that. And so before we go, Cathy, one question I do want to ask you, what is your favorite thing you do for yourself? Like if you had the magic wand and you could do anything you want today for your self-care, what does that look like for you?
Well, one of the main things I do is walking my dog. So especially working at home, it's so easy just to keep working for hours, but my dog gets me out on a regular basis, gets me out in the sunshine and the fresh air. So that's a big part. And I think too, reflecting back, because quite often we get frustrated about, our goals and what we haven't gotten done yet and all those things, but really getting myself to focus back on what I did get done. What were the accomplishments? How far have I come? And then worrying less about where I haven't been yet and just focusing more on enjoying and being grateful for what I have accomplished. So,
I can resonate with that. We have a puppy. She's 6 months old, and she's keeping us very much on our toes and out
yes.
outside. It's a lot of fun. So I love it. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And Cathy, as you know, I shared with you before we started, we have one last thing we have to do before we close out the show, and that is our Better Questions, Better Life cards. So if you are new to the show, these cards, you can go to betterquestionsbetterlife.com. My friend Carol and her friend Diana, they created these cards, and they're amazing cards. You can journal them every day. Just get your day started by just pulling a card. So we're going to shuffle it, and Cathy's going to answer the question that comes up. So here we go, Cathy. Tell me when to stop.
Yeah.
All right. So Cathy's question is, am I thinking for myself? I'm going to go first, and then you can answer. How's that sound?
Sure.
All right. So the question is, am I thinking for myself? For me, yes. My big word this year is streamline. I came up with that because, especially in business, we have so many processes. And then in life, there's so much things going on. And I wanted to streamline how both of those can come together and not overwhelm and not cause burnout. And that's really my big passion about coaching women, is to not have burnout and find that harmony in life. Because I don't believe you're ever, ever, ever imbalanced, but you can find harmony, right? And so my word this year is streamline, because I realized halfway, three-quarters way through the year last year, that I had a lot going on, a lot of systems happening that weren't talking to one another. So I started my business. I found a way to streamline into one program without all my emails and social media management and all of that stuff. I also realized that some things I don't want to do myself, so I have a VA that helps me with that. And then for my home life, it's streamlining what our schedules look like, making sure my husband and I are talking to each other's schedule, and making sure that we're honoring each other's goals for the year. And so my husband actually owns a business as well, and I'm helping him with his first vendor event in 2 weeks. So if I hadn't streamlined, I might not have had that time to help him kick that off. So yeah, I'm definitely thinking for myself, especially around streamline, because if it doesn't serve what my goal is for this year, it's a no. So how about you, Cathy? Are you thinking for yourself?
Yes, yes, I definitely am. And part of how that shows up for me is everything I'm doing really is stuff that I've created out of my own imagination. So rather than feeling like I have to follow somebody else's path and somebody else's guidelines on this, you do this, then you do that, then so I've really learned to trust myself and listen to my own intuition on what are those parts that I want included in my business, and then what are the things, like you say, that aren't valuable in my time or my energy. So yes.
I love that. Thinking for self is so, so important. Thinking for self. I'm going to remember that. So, well, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Cathy. I want to thank you for coming on. And those that are listening, go to our website, wsliving.com, wsliving.com. You can learn more about all the great things we have coming up, including how to book a joy clarity call. If you're not sure where you're going in your life, what you should do, and you're kind of lost in what your joy is anymore, just book the Joy Clarity call. I'd love to chat with you, give you that free 30-minute call, and help you identify some joys in your life. So my name is Pearl Sharenza. Thank you so much for listening to Soulful Self-Care Conversations. And before we leave, remember, you come into this world, you're a little rough of an oyster on the outside, but when you do some work on the inside, you will find your inner pearl to greatness and become stronger, happier, empowered, radiant, and the original Shiro you're supposed to be. Have a great day. Hey everybody, I am so excited to have had Cathy on today. We had some after conversation too. It was really, really cool. She's got some great projects coming up. So, it's like she said, why not put the best-selling author title at the end of your name? So what are you waiting for? Reach out to her. Your story matters. You can empower somebody and change somebody's life just with your story. Stop holding it within and get it out to the world. I hope you have a great day, and thanks again. And remember, wsliving.com is where you want to go visit us. Have a great day.
No